Now, not all of the lessons I taught were as disorganized and unclear as that particular Year 11 biology lesson. I also taught a Year 9 class at Elfington Grammar, and there was something really special about this class. They're a really great group of friendly kids who are genuinely interested in science and eager to contribute in class, so I got on well with them right from the start. Unfortunately, I didn't get all that many lessons with them because the originally scheduled classes kept getting interrupted with things like excursions and major assessment projects that they were completing for another subject. But I still tried to take advantage of as many opportunities as I could to get them really involved with learning science rather than just rushing through the content and passively absorbing the information. During my first few weeks of working with the Year 9s, we were finishing up a unit on photosynthesis and respiration, and at this point we had recently gone over the features of plants that make it possible for them to exchange gas with the surrounding atmosphere. And the structures that I really wanted the students to consider and get a good look at were the stomata and the guard cells. I took the photos shown here throughout a practical activity that actually ended up going really well. In the previous lessons, we had discussed the importance of stomata and guard cells and how they regulate exchange of carbon dioxide and water loss. And we'd also discussed the light and dark stages of photosynthesis and the time of day when stomata are most likely to be open. So I found an activity specifically relating to this, and there was an activity in the Year 9 textbook, but it seemed a little bit tricky and it required a lot of materials and more time than we actually had, so I looked for something a little quicker and more straightforward. And I ended up finding an activity online which is apparently pretty popular at the Year 9 level, and it only required a few basic materials and a few relatively quick and easy steps which I thought the students would handle really well. So basically, what the students had to do was make imprints of leaves using clear nail polish and tape, and if they did it properly, they were able to see the outline of guard cells and stomata under a microscope. In order to help discover or at least reinforce the concept of when stomata are more likely to be open, the students compared leaves of one plant which had been exposed to light and one which had been sitting in the dark for the past couple of days. And the way they compared them was basically just by counting the number of stomata they found on each leaf imprint. And now, with this prac, it still didn't go without its faults. At first, I struggled to find the right type of plant, and apparently leaves which have thick, waxy layers on the top are not ideal, but the leaf itself still needs to be pretty durable, and so it doesn't tear while making the imprints. And after this previously mentioned year level lesson, I knew it would be smart to have a backup, so I got two different types of plants, and one which ended up being perfect for what we were doing. Also, at the beginning of the lesson, I was sure to clearly explain how I expected the students to go about the activity, and I gave specific reminders about handling the microscopes appropriately. But even with all of the explanations, there were still a couple of confused students, and I had to remind a couple of groups about the best method of getting a clear imprint, but at least it was nowhere near the level of uncertainty that had happened in the lesson before. So the main reason that I think the activity went really well in the end was because all but one of the groups was able to make a really good imprint of the leaves so that they could see the stomata and guard cells clearly. And the group that wasn't able to make a good imprint still had plenty of other good examples to have a look at. I think this was a great activity for a few reasons. First, since the stomata and guard cells are pretty much impossible to see with the naked eye, I think that making a way for students to see the structures of the leaf better under a microscope made it seem more real to them as opposed to just looking at the pictures in the books or any of the diagrams that I could have showed them in class. And also, I really think that the students felt a sense of accomplishment for managing to make something so successful. And since I could already see for myself that the students were really getting it, I was feeling really proud of them, and I'm sure that the students could pick up on my upbeat attitude, so all this really added to the great atmosphere and energy in the classroom. Finally, one of the things that I think was helpful with this lesson at this stage was since I knew we were pressed for time and in terms of wrapping up the unit and preparing for a test, instead of having the students write a full lab report for the particular prac, I just prepared a really straightforward worksheet for them to fill out, which had some discussion questions about the activity. And I think this was useful because this way I could check the objectives of the lesson and make sure they had been met. And the students were glad to not have to go through the whole process of writing up a formal lab report, which can sometimes just be tedious and time consuming. So, despite things not always going as planned, my mentor was glad to see me always pushing through. And now that I think back, I realize that I've learned so much through both teaching rounds, even if I sometimes ended up going about it the hard way. But overall, I really had a great time at Alphington Grammar, and I'm looking forward to many more teaching and learning experiences down the track.